Welcome to the experiment. I'm Bill Correll, and this is my investigation. My research project to gather data from 100 beautiful human beings for the sole purpose to see what actually happens across the interviews. Now, the questions are fixed, and all the interviews will remain consistent, with the variable being the actual participants themselves and their answers. It's as if I'm having you, John, come sit on my porch so I can learn about people. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, we're going to look forward to what we'll learn at the end of all of this, but you know what? At the moment, I'm really interested in you. So, what is your full name?
John Lewis Clark III, but call me Jay. Don't call me John.
That's great. So, tell me a little bit more about that. John Lewis Clark III.
Yes. Well, my father made that decision, obviously. You know, um, it was it's interesting because everybody says I have such a regal name, but it's funny because I have a regal name, but I'm far from a regal person, put it that way. You know, it's it's um it's awesome to actually have like that third moniker, the knowing that you're the third in the line,
Yeah,
having
this
that
is like a
moniker.
legacy name, right?
It is. But then again, what's interesting is once you find out about my legacy, you're like, okay, hey, being the third one, it is what it is. So
Yeah, there's an old saying, it's not how you get started, it's how you finished, right? So from wherever you are, there's always this opportunity for the rest of your life, and that's a good thing, no question about it.
very
What's
true.
your favorite, nickname, John, that most people don't know you have?
Um, Actually, Jay, because a lot of people used to call me JC, things like that. But over time, it's morphed to Jay, and only really people out here in Austin know
Yeah.
me as Jay. My people back at home, not at all.
Do you have any pet names from any loved ones, parents, daughters, whatever?
Now, my mom, she still calls me Johnny.
Johnny. That's a great, great way to be known. Most of my
Yeah.
family and friends from the early days still call me Billy, even though I just had a 70th birthday. Among the Irish, that is a very, very strong show of respect. Handsome Johnny, upright Billy, just usually comes along with some kind of a respectful term that describes the human being, and it gives us a familiarity. That E at the end. So your mom has that connection with you, clearly.
Okay. Okay. Well, at least I knew it. I put it this way. I know it's a mark of like you said, respect. But I get used to it. She's the only one that can call me Johnny. You know.
I would imagine. So we'll move on. And when did you first notice what color hair you had?
Like I said, I am a bald, and I started turning bald when I was around uh 23,
Mm,
and just I don't know, and but I noticed it was black when it was coming out, so and it's
you see it in the sink or in the shower,
both,
okay.
both.
So 23, and what was that like for you?
You know what? At first, it was a problem, but then what was great was, see, I grew up around the '90s where Michael Jordan was awesome,
Mhm.
so being bald was awesome. Problem was I can't play basketball, but still, that's a whole different story. You
Yeah.
know, you can look that the bald head look seriously was starting to come in, so it wasn't really a problem. So once that happened, I just shaved my head, and ever since then, I just started shaving.
Yeah. Yeah, there are several prominent men in my life as well, including my best friend and my godson, that both in their 20s started shaving because they were seeing this male pattern baldness thing where it was chasing
Yes.
towards the center, a little bit of a hole in the back, and the forehead was getting tall. I just finally the comb over wasn't working for my best buddy anymore. He just said, "No, we're just going to give it up."
I mean, I remember. See, there was an old television show that used to come on in like the 80s, late 70s. It was called The Jeffersons.
Oh yeah,
And okay, so if you know Sherman Hemsley, that's what my head looked like,
yeah,
where I had that crowning balding in the middle. I was like, nope. I look and I'm like, nah, I can't. So
yeah,
it had to go. It
yeah.
had to go.
Makes all the sense in the world. So, what's your favorite thing to do to intentionally waste time?
You know, listening to music, it's interesting because I listen to old rock and roll music. I mean, like old Aerosmith, stuff like that.
Yep.
And again, as a black man, that's kind of strange to a lot of my friends because they're like, "What?" I mean, I'm a hip hop fan,
Yeah.
rap music fan, but there's something about a lot of those old bands that I just love. You
Yeah.
know, I listen to them all day because one thing I've listened to is that they seem to have a lot of their lyrics are just talking about stuff I'm going through, and you listen and
Yeah.
you're like, how does this guy know me? It's like 20 years my senior. How does he know me?
Yeah.
But you can the reality is you could fall in love with something. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything anybody likes, but to waste time, I'll do that. You know, even though I'm thinking that it's still moving me forward, sometimes I'll just stop what I'm
Yep.
doing and I'll listen to it. That's me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of I agree with you. It's very interesting. And I had an opportunity to spend some time really getting into the classics, in my 20s. I mean, prior to that, of course, I listened to pop music and the AM radio was going everywhere. I'm a few months older than you are, John. So, uh, I was listening to that music when it was new. For instance, you start thinking about Aerosmith and Walk This Way and some of the other things, Dream On and what have you. These are
Right.
53-year-old songs, man, and they're still just as cool as they ever were.
Absolutely. I mean, see, great music, that's the whole thing. Great music is absolutely timeless.
Right.
It doesn't matter, you know, who, how old you are. It's interesting because, like you said, those songs were brand new when you were coming out.
Yep.
53 years have gone by, and we're still having this conversation,
Yes.
so
Yeah, and I guess that's the definition of classic, something that has stood the test of time. And maybe you and I will be part of something that will have a classic effect on the world as well. That sometime down the road, even if they don't know that we were the pioneers or somebody who kept it going, they'll look back and they'll just really appreciate that it's been here for a minute?
I mean, listen, it's funny. There are a lot of great quotes that are out there. There are a lot of great works, and it always says artists unknown.
Yeah, wrote a
It's
lot,
like,
didn't he?
and so whoever that person was,
Yeah,
he obviously, um, uh, people gravitated to whatever he said or whatever was done. But unfortunately, like if it was a drawing or a painting, he didn't sign it. And if it was a saying,
yeah,
obviously that person wasn't he didn't consider himself important enough to have it labeled as his, you
Yeah.
know? Who knows?
It's kind of interesting from the perspective of most of the folks that I ask this question of. It turns out that what they're doing to intentionally waste time gives them access to a sense of well-being, or it kind of contributes to their overall frame of mind in terms of everything else that's going on in their lives. And turns out it's really not all that much of a time waster anymore because the side benefits of it are so great, you know? I kind of get that from you.
Well, that's true, because like you said, I mean, I'll be in the middle of something, and of course, I'm listening to my music, and I'll be in the middle of something, and then after a while, I just, you know, something in the lyric will catch me, and I'm like, "Okay, yeah," and now I'm down the rabbit hole of that music, so, and it'll
Yes.
be 15, 20 minutes before I get back to, "Oh, I had something I needed to do," you
Right.
know? It is what it is.
Oh yeah, deadline. Yeah. So, along those lines, what is your favorite movie to watch alone?
The Usual Suspects, all
100.
day. I love Gabriel Byrne played the role. Kevin Spacey
Yep.
played that love him or hate him, he played that role, you know? And it
Yeah.
was just like, there were a lot of good I mean, Chris Penn was in it. Look, you're looking at, so many people. I mean, it was like one of the debuts of Benicio del Toro, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, this plot, this intricate plot, it it's interesting because when you look at nowadays, the person that plays that meek role, you truly never know what power they absolutely hold.
Yeah.
You know, it's I mean, it's all about, you know, being able to create that illusion. And when he was able to make this group appear that they were controlling
Yes.
the circumstance, when in reality, he was controlling them and controlling the entire environment the entire time.
Yes.
You know, it's I just love that movie. It's a great psychological thriller.
Well, without giving everything away in the plot, the last 5 minutes just makes it a masterclass in terms of how to live your life in a powerful
Yep,
way against circumstances that are beyond, all expectations of you ever getting out of it, you know?
absolutely.
So, did you, without getting in too deep into it, did you identify in particular with any of the characters or the one that was portrayed by our buddy Kevin?
More of the Kevin character because you know I've learned that true strength, doesn't really come with showing absolutely how strong you are. Listen, I'm a little guy.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because a lot of people have taken that for granted
Yes.
until we have circumstances. You know, it's a different situation. But and again, it's not always about strength, combat, whatever, what have you. Mental muscle, being able to just think about things differently, you know, it's always interesting. It's actually pretty cool to have people underestimate you because it's always a shock when something else occurs, put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the people who are calm when everybody else is going crazy that are actually in control, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a great movie, and it's one of my favorites too. I think one of my favorite quotes in another movie, Devil's Advocate, is when Pacino says to his young protege, "Never let him see you coming, Daniel."
Yes. Yes, that was actually a pretty decent movie, man. Him and
Yeah,
Keanu Reeves, they actually gelled on that movie. It was
yeah,
a pretty good movie. That line, yes, not something I don't remember much about the like many lines in the movie. I
right.
remember the plot, I remember all that, but that never let them see you coming.
Yep,
That's definitely that is a line.
yeah.
You know, it runs along with that few good men line that I'm out of order, you're out of order. I mean, I'm sorry, not that one. That was Son of a Woman. I apologize.
No,
But
that was
the
yeah, no, that "You're out of order, I'm out of order."
that's right,
I love
bro.
that line too, yeah.
You know, but I was talking more about the Kevin Spacey. I mean Kevin Spacey. I'm sorry. More of the Jack Nicholson line when he was in A Few Good Men and he's talking and he's like, "You can't handle the truth." That is a classic line right there.
Yeah, and that's a place where he chose to make the stand for his character. "You
Right.
want me on that wall, you
You
want me to."
need me on that wall.
Exactly, exactly, and he sold it, didn't he?
He really did. I mean, yeah, he really did.
So those at home don't know that we had a quick conversation about this before we fired up the recording, but it's that time, John. If you were to have an action figure made of you, what superpower would it have, and what color would its uniforms be?
Definitely flying. That's the ultimate superpower, you know. And the my logo is actually orange and blue.
Okay.
So those would be the colors of my uniform. You know, like, I don't know if I'd have a cape or anything like that, but it's like, the ability to fly is just awesome because I everything is that 30,000-foot view. You're seeing the world, you know, you're seeing a big picture view of the world, and everything looks so small. Everything looks like you could look it's I mean, have when you're in a plane
Yeah,
and you look through the mirror, I mean, mirror, excuse me, you look through the window and you're like, "Man, this is like a Lego thing," until you start getting closer and closer and closer.
yeah.
But that I think flying is definitely one of that would be one of the things I would absolutely enjoy.
And so now how would you put that to use for yourself personally, and then maybe for the good of those, in the rest of the world, especially those you love?
You know, it's interesting because I kind of looked at the flying thing as more of a personal situation. But you know what, when you can fly, you know that if your friends or your family or if anybody was in some type of harm or some type of danger, you could lift them up out of it. I mean, I didn't really look at it that way until you actually asked, but that's really what flying would do. Is like if somebody was in a tough situation and they needed to be extracted quickly, the ability to go and swoop down, grab them, move, it takes care of the whole thing.
Mhm. Yeah, you can be powerful in a situation where it's called for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll move back through time, and Sherman set the Wayback Machine. What did you want to grow up to be when you were 5 years old?
That was a good question. Um, like I said, probably, I mean, a cop back in the my father was a police officer, and, you know, following that kinda moniker, that kinda route. But then, like I said, I also thought about wanting to be Steve Austin, wanting to be a Bionic Man
Yeah.
because, I mean, it was a classic. He's a classic, and when you're a kid, you know, something like that's intriguing. You don't realize it's because he broke all his bones and had to, but
Yeah,
you're like, hey, but I think maybe a police officer on a more serious side, probably a cop when I was a kid.
yeah. And can you remember what would inspire you? Was it in particular, if you kinda think back, as a five-year-old, was it what your dad looked like in uniform? Was it the stories that you heard from other people or how you saw police portrayed on TV? Or was there anything in particular, or was it just seem like a good idea?
Um, Probably the uniform, but then also I remember riding in a squad car one day, being able to play with the siren and stuff like that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're the envy of a lot of your kids, a lot of your friends. I mean, I'm 5, so there's not too everybody around me who was about my age was like, "Oh, you got to ride a police car?" Type of thing. It's not like it's not like now where it's like, "Oh, you run the police car?" It's
Yeah, five-year-olds are usually going the other direction these days.
right, right.
Well, maybe someday, you never know. So that's a great one, and, was your grandfather in law enforcement or some other type of leadership position?
No, my grandfather was a postman, and it it was now that was intriguing because for I was actually a postman for a little while, and
Mhm.
let me tell you something. That is one of the most difficult jobs in the world, and my grandfather did it for 44 years,
Wow.
you know, and it was just like I think about it. I mean, I remember, like, when I would go and spend the night over at my nana's house, and he would be up at 4:30 in the morning because he had to get ready to go to, he had to be there
Yeah,
by 6:30 so they can have his truck ready and everything. And you look at that. I mean, he was religious with that,
yeah,
where he had to go to bed at a certain time because he knew he had to get up at a certain time, all that stuff.
yeah. Yeah, that's a consummate professional that can hold that job down for 44 years. It's a very difficult job. I have personal experience with that because that's what my wife is doing for a living right now, and she won't give it up, you know?
Really?
Yeah, she's been doing that for this is now almost 3 years, since, during COVID, but the point is that we live that life of getting up early and her getting home late, and, she signed up as a part-timer, but, most of the time she works 5 or 6 days a week, so
Yeah, yeah. It's well, you know what his was interesting. When I started, it was when the there was a post office kinda coup type of thing. It was the it was the old regulars is what they would call them
yep,
versus the part-timers. And it was like it was interesting because the regulars didn't really wanna teach the part-timers anything for fear that the part-timers would become part of the regular group and that, it was a very seclusive club.
yep,
And it was just like I remember going through that because it was interesting because I just needed a job. I never really wanted to be a part of the postman's club. I didn't really want to be in a union and things like that. I mean, I knew there were good benefits and I had a family, so I had to look at that. But it also in the back of my mind, I just didn't want my grandfather's life.
yeah,
I mean, he had a great life, but also I think that I'm gonna tell you something. My grandfather, really funny guy, really, I think he could have done something different
mhm,
if he had given himself. the opportunity. But, also, see, back then, when to be a black man in a union position, it was almost like you felt like you made it. I mean, he had the benefits, he had he had a lot of things that a lot of other, you know, a lot of other brothers his age at the time, just especially in that day, didn't
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So,
A future
he was,
without a mystery, right?
yeah, and that's the whole thing. It's like, see, what's interesting is when you come from certain worlds, I guess, you you seek safety and security
Right.
because for the most part, your life has been a mystery.
Yeah.
Every day is a mystery. So you gravitate towards the safer option, but those who have those who have had that type of security throughout their life, what ends up happening is over time, they become the risk taker. Because I mean, just,
Yeah.
it's an opposite effect type of thing. And like I said, I don't look, I don't put any blames on my grandfather. This 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 man, he took care of my grandmother. He took care of my father. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And he was my grandmother's second husband, but
Yep.
he's the only grandfather I've ever known. You know, it was just like, but like I said, you see differences in that in certain things. I knew I didn't want to be like him. So,
Yeah.
not in that respect.
Yeah, the road that he chose probably took him away from a lot of family functions on holidays and all the rest of that sort of thing, and there might be an easier way, to get through life other than, something that becomes all consuming and your number one priority. I get that.
It's I mean, Bill, it's weird because you're torn between two things where it's like, okay, I do need to spend my time with the family, but if I don't do this, we starve.
Yep.
It's that's anybody
Mhm.
looks at that. And again, it's funny, it's very interesting. I just read a book. Well, actually audio book, a book. There's a guy named Jason Harris that uh me and Kate interviewed for our Happily Ever After podcast.
Right.
And Jason is he's a fully ordained minister, but he's also what's called a celebrant um in the funeral business. And it just in his book, he started reciting lines from Harry Chapin's Cats in the Cradle.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting because the reversal in that song is incredible because and then when he said my boy grew up just like me, it was absolutely true,
Yes.
you know? And it's just like everybody has to look at this balance. And and it's weird because in any situation, balance is balance is only attainable when you decide to take a role of mediocrity. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being that guy that's, hey, listen, I come home, have a beer, food's on the table, I watch a movie or a TV. It's all that's a human experience. But
Yes.
then, but then you think about there, it I don't know if you know David Goggins, but this guy, David Goggins, he is an extremist. And put it this way, he is he was in the SEAL Team 6 that got Osama bin Laden. All right. He is he actually passed the Navy SEAL training, then he passed the Air Force Tag P training, then he passed the Army Ranger School training. Then I mean, he did all that in 1 month. He ran in 1 month. He ran three 100-mile races.
Yes.
Now, his whole thing was that the mind has you put your own governor on your mind. Now it did cost him some health issues, but his whole thing was that you had to realize you had to sacrifice these certain things. But what David Goggins said, just a little backstory, but what Goggins said was he was like, look, there is no balance. He was like, if you're trying to obtain a goal, there will not be balance.
Right.
Like Michael Jordan, in order for Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant to be the best of the best, their practice schedules had to be intense. They practiced away from the team.
Right.
They practiced at times, you know, I'm sure their wives were like, "Come in for dinner," and they were like, "Nah, I still got another 500 shots to make," and type of thing. And so that again, that balance is it's not there. But again, when you want to be the best in something, you have to realize that it cannot be done within the parameters of normalcy,
Right.
you know. And then on the other side of that coin is if you decide that, you know, life is a party and I'm just gonna chill, I'm gonna hang out, whatever, what have you, you're on the other side of imbalance,
Yep.
you know. And again, s- it's like you can the the person who is on the side where they want to be the best, they'll be okay with living an unbalanced life because everybody on that side understands the unbalance.
Right.
Now, the person on the other side of things, you know, they'll find a group of people that are okay with being unbalanced too, you
Yeah.
know. But it's when you make the decision to seek balance, it goes right back to what I was talking about with my grandfather. You seek that safety and that security, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that you don't give yourself an opportunity to find what might be great about you.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna
Simple.
tell you something. I really love where you're going here, and you've actually produced a very fine segue into the next question, which is, what's your greatest accomplishment?
uh, my babies.
Yeah.
I'm one thing I'm lucky about. See, I am I'm the son of a single parent. My mom my mom and dad just couldn't get along, and bygones were bygones. It was what it was. And I grew up with my mom, me and my brother.
Mm.
I swore to myself that I would never, never leave my children under no condition. And I've held to that. I mean, even like my wife's been dead since 2016. And
I'm
you
sorry for
know,
John. I really am.
thank you, thank you. I'm what I'm blessed about is that I've learned how to walk through that type of thing,
Yes.
you know. And like I said, like my daughters are my oldest is going to be 26 on the 17th. You
Wow.
know, my youngest is she'll be entering UConn Law in August.
Mhm.
And, these are things, I mean, my babies were 13 and 17 when their mother passed.
Yeah.
And and it was just like, and the one thing I told my wife, and you know, when she was on her deathbed, I told her, I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna take care of these girls. You don't have to worry about that." You know, and and I I have no problem giving what I need to give to. Now, there's a difference between taking care and taking care. Like, I have no. There have been so many times where they're just like, I don't agree with the way you do it because I'm old school. I grew up a single parent. You know, I'm like, look, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. And I know that at times I may have been um pressure laden, but I also now see the diamonds that have been produced from the pressure.
Yep.
Like I said, I got my youngest daughter's she's so driven. She just got um she got into Fordham as well. She's not going to Fordham because UConn actually gave her put it this way. I told you, Bill. UConn gave her a full scholarship to law school.
That's great.
I mean, you're like, and again, it's funny. I wanted to say I'm not bragging, but I think to a certain degree, yes, I am. But
You
it,
better be
but,
bragging. It sounds to me like you got something to brag about.
but it's like, you know, that's why I say that's no matter whatever I do in life,
Yeah.
that will be the greatest achievements. Know that I have two beautiful daughters.
That's huge. It's really huge. And you know what that brings to mind? I'm kind of curious. Who's your favorite person to listen to?
Um, I love this gentleman. His name is Eddie Pinero, and he has this podcast called Your World Within. And I was just going through some really challenging times. And all of a sudden I hear him.
Yeah.
And just turned on YouTube one day and I'm listening to him. And I'm talking to him. And he's talking to me rather through the and it was almost like seriously, it was almost like he clearly understood what I was going through. And the more I listened to him, I went back and I listened to some old stuff, and it was just like, this guy's been there.
Mhm.
This guy's done this. This guy's done that. And now when I hear he does these little talking points for YouTube and things like that, or his little podcast, and and he's always just talking about some real world situations. Always talks about how he overcame something or how he's looking at something, you
Sure.
know. And it's interesting because his when you look at his view about it, you're like, okay, that is definitely interesting to observe. So I like listening to this guy.
Fantastic. How do you spell his last name for folks that are listening at home? They want to go look him up.
Pinero, Pinero.
Marvelous. Very good. So now please complete this sentence, John. When I grow up, I'd like to.
When I grow up, seriously, I like to do what I can to help people know that they they can use their hardships to their advantage. I've always thought this way. And that's why I kinda bring this in. It's what I do, which is talk to people about understanding the strength that they have from the perceived weakness that they have.
Mhm.
Like I said, I saw my mom go through it. I mean, my mother is a fully ordained minister, but when when my father left, she was a broken woman,
Yeah.
you know, and to see what she has become from that. And then I look at so many other people who have had truly broken situations, whether it was from a death, whether it was from something they did themselves. I talk to clients all the time about, or I talk to people all the time about these different scenarios of where people have taken challenges and turned them into incredible fuel.
Yeah.
I I always talk about Buster Douglas. Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson 2 days before the guy's mom died. You
Yeah.
know, a month before he got divorced. I mean, it's like, come on, that's a that's a lot of grief, and a lot of people would have allowed it to stagnate them. But he found a way to reroute that negative energy and transform it into a fuel
Sure.
that allowed him to knock out the heavyweight champion of the world, you
Yeah.
know, and he's just one of them. Real quick, another story I love to tell people is the story of Clapton. Eric Clapton, he lost a 4-year-old kid,
Yes.
and from there, Tears from Tears from Heaven, Tears in Heaven was born, and and Tears in Heaven never would have been written if his son had not have died.
Yep.
Now, that song won the man 3 Grammys. He's now on Rolling Stone magazine's top 500 songs of all time with that song,
Right.
you know. And the reason why I bring that up is because he had to go through the grief of not only the loss of his son, but when you're a popular character as Clapton is, the world thinks they know everything about you. And so he couldn't turn on his TV without somebody giving a comment about what happened to his son. He couldn't listen to the radio.
Right.
He couldn't even walk the streets without people saying, "Hey, there's Clapton. Man, what happened to, blase blah." So he found a way to manipulate that energy and reroute it
Mhm.
so that he can create this beautiful hit. And now that song helps so many people to get through challenging time. It helped me. So
Yes.
I know a lot of other people I know to listen to that song.
Yeah.
You know, it makes it's Clapton had no idea of the effect that Connor's death had on the world.
Right. Yeah. So you're always teeing up the next question, and here it is.
The
What's the most important thing in life to you right now?
most important thing in life is seriously, it is true happiness. And true happiness, I always thought it was an end game thing. True happiness is understanding the value of the journey. That's true happiness because appreciating the ups, the ebbs, and the flows, and every aspect that does create happiness. Progress, put it this way, Tony Robbins has said that. He said progress creates happiness. And he's right because the more you decide to move forward, the better off you are, the happier you are.
Right.
Stagnation, put it this way, stagnation is just like this. It's like you buy a car, really nice car, you love it, it's all good. It's, you know, 4 months down the line, your neighbor buys a car just slightly better. Now you're looking at your car like, man, although your car's awesome, you know, but you feel that, you know, that as long as you're, maybe that's not the best, maybe that's not the best way to put that, but you live in the house
Yeah.
and you stay in that home for 30, 40 years, and you tell yourself, well, this is my home, this is, but you're not willing to be fluid, you're not willing to move around. Or there are some people that haven't left their neighborhood, they haven't left their city, and it's like, wait, hold on a second. You, y- how can you think of progressing, or how can you think you're happy if you've never been outside of these four walls, or this parameter of your block, or this parameter of your neighborhood?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. So I've had the pleasure of like being able to go to different places, and whether it's in the country, Texas is a big state, so it's like with here, anywhere around here, been to other countries. I've had the opportunity. Now, mind you, I'm a kid from East Orange, New Jersey, a place where a lot of people literally stay within the parameters of the city,
Yeah.
don't leave the city.
Yep.
You know, I've had the pleasure of being able to go to all these different places and do all these different things, and that's why for me progress is, that's that is the end all be all. You
Yeah.
know, so I hope I answered your question right.
Well, I like it, and there's no right way to answer any question that I ask you. It's the answer that you give is the one that is thought provoking. And while you were speaking, I had a couple of things that I was sort of thinking. One is that there are people I know, where you lived in New Jersey. There are people in Edison, Hackensack,
Right,
name another place, and they've never been to your city. They
right,
never
right.
left theirs. There was
There,
no need
there
for them to.
people in Trenton stay in Trenton.
Yeah.
Don't even go to Philly.
Well, here's the other really cool thing about it, that many of them don't go anyplace else because there's fear associated with leaving where
Yes,
they are now. And then
yes.
there are every once in a while there's a crackpot somewhere along the way who basically says, "Why would I go anywhere else? I got everything I need right here
Right
every
here.
single day of my life. I am the happiest clam ever. God and Jesus been good to me, and I'm really just plain happy to be here and be alive?" And
And
you wanna have
you
a
know
cup
what?
of coffee with that guy, don't you?
No, and no, and the reason why is because you don't want that to rub off on you.
Oh,
And and again, nothing wrong with a person like that. Just simply saying that. See, what's interesting is a person like that can easily attract a group of people to believe that that's the best course of action,
right.
because the other way is the scariest way. It's literally opening up the door to your comfort zone
Yep.
and walking out into the chaos.
Yeah.
But look, um, it's one of those situations where if you don't open the door, if you don't walk out into the chaos,
Yep.
you'll never know what's on the other side
Right.
because on the other side could be the glory that you only thought of,
Yep.
but your fear is what kept you away from it.
Perfect. And to that end, what would you like to leave in the world after your life is done?
I want to make sure that I leave a legacy of letting people know, don't let anything stop you. You know, my like I said, my whole thing is letting people know that they can use their challenges to their advantage. And I want people to understand that we're gonna go through challenge in life,
Yep.
but you don't let that stop you. You don't let that keep you from being potentially the best version of you, you know, because it's too easy to let that happen. A lot of people will it I use a lot of quotes when I say stuff, but
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, he said a lot of people make they justify their fear as practicality.
Mhm.
And we do that. A lot of people will do something and say, well, again, they found the safety and the security. And then from there, they justify that as happiness, although over time that morphs into regret,
Yep.
you know? So
Yeah.
it's like, so my whole thing is letting people know it's crazy, but
Yeah.
it's better to die on your feet than on your knees.
Mhm.
There's no reason to have a slow death.
Yeah.
One of those where you're 90 years old and you're crabby and upset at all the stuff you just didn't do, you know, or the guy that passed away at 73, but had a chance to do so many things.
Mm.
That's a difference.
That's a very, very interesting philosophy. And I what I'm hearing is that you're at a point in your life right now where it just wouldn't be all right for you to be comfortable without having questions about it. That the most important thing for you right now at this point in your life, given what you've been through, is to be in that space where every single day there's an opportunity for you to look at things in a critical way and start asking questions about what else is possible? What else can I be doing here? And who else can I meet? And where else can I go? And maybe a lot more questions, beyond that. Is that pretty much kind of like what you're expressing? And not just for you, but for everyone.
You know what? Yes, yes, to a large degree, and I'll tell you why. See, what's interesting is death. Death will force you to look at things in a different way. And when I
Mm,
say that, I, the death of my wife, she passed at 44.
yep.
This woman had so much that I knew she wanted to contribute to the world, you know. But I also know that she definitely was the type of woman that wanted the safety and the security and and always try to act as if she could play two ends against the middle, but
Right.
realize that for her it was being on this side of the coin, you know. And when I when I realized that that unfortunately her potential died with her.
Yeah.
I had to say to myself, I can't do that. I got to figure out what I need to do. So it drove me, and I think a lot of people who shift their perspective to see that the challenges of loss can really fuel you. You'll never forget the person you lost.
Right.
But also, one thing I can say is I'm pretty sure that my wife is looking at me and is like, "Yeah, you did a pretty decent job, man. You're doing a good job." You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So that's what that's I hope that's what you want.
Yeah, no, when you're thinking about what you're gonna leave behind, that's extremely important. So, I guess, I gotta just jump on the last question, and that is, what's the thing that most people misunderstand about you, John?
I think a lot of people um they mistake my good intentions. And I say that to say because we live in a world where everybody thinks that, you know, you're doing something because you need something,
Right,
and that's the only reason why you're responding this way. Um, Personally, I've just been too screwed over by people to to say I'm going to do that to people.
right.
And so my whole thing is, you know what? I want to try to be as genuine as I possibly can be. And sometimes people look at that like, come on, man, you can't be this genuine. You can't be this guy. You
Yeah,
what else? What do you want? You know what I'm saying? I don't. If I want something, I'll say it up front. So before the relationship starts, you know what I want. You know, and my whole thing is I'm not looking to butter you up to get it.
yeah,
I'm like, look, my whole thing is if I like you, and this is my genuine self.
yeah,
You know, and that I mean, it's cost me a lot. It gets you burned, but
yep.
you know what? It's also the reality is you get a chance to really meet some genuine people when you act that genuine. And yeah, you're gonna run across some people that are just gonna, you know, be cautionary or not believe what not believe the way you see things, or try to one up you or to because they just want to make sure that they get you before you get them type of
Oh,
thing.
yeah,
You know, it's happened that way before. But I've learned over time that honestly, um, acting in a way where others don't necessarily know or or have an issue with you, they're not your tribe anyway.
yeah.
So, you know, it's put it this way, detrimentally, it's worked to my advantage. You know?
Sooner or later, right? You get
Right.
there. All right. Well, that's fantastic. Let's turn the tables for a minute. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, what's up with the extra long beard?
That's a short story. Daughter number two's asked me to grow a beard twice in my life. Once when I was 30, and that grew out to about here after a year and a half, and that's where it stayed. I shaved it off, within the first couple of years, but she was 4 years old at the time. And then she asked me again right after COVID started, June or July of COVID, that first year. She, both of my son-in-laws were growing beards. And, they're pretty handsome men, covering their face was fine, but, at the same time, she said, "The guys are doing it. Why don't you grow your beard to pack out again, dad?" And I said, "Well, sure, I'll do that." And so the length of the beard is because I was trimming it, and it's like every week and a half, I was cutting off a quarter of an inch or so, and I thought, "This is kinda nuts." I thought I was gonna have to, be able to stop shaving altogether. So I said, "Well, let's just see what happens in a month." Well, in a month, it was down to about here. In 2 months, it was down to here, and then suddenly, it got down to where I had these little straggly ends, and I cut those off about 3 inches, a couple of times, and I just finally decided a year ago, I'm gonna let this thing go, and when I finally do take it off, I'm gonna do a little bit of a fundraiser and see if I can make some money for a charity. I'll I'll get
Okay. Okay.
all my friends, those that love me and those that don't, to see if they can, outbid each other for, and raise a little
For
bit.
Bill's hair.
He's gonna shave it off. I mean,
Okay.
I've done that a
Okay.
couple of times losing weight, but that's a great question. Thank you.
Hey, you know what? I like I said, I really wanted to know because I'm like, one, you are you're an extremely put together dude, and even with the beard, handsome, all put together. Like you wear well. It's definitely not the type of thing where most people you're like, what's up with the beard thing? It wasn't what's up with the beard thing. It was like it becomes a point of desired conversation. You're
Yes.
like, yeah, I want to know more about it. So now I
Yeah.
got the answer. I appreciate that, man.
Well, you're very, very welcome. And is there anything else that you'd like to say to kinda wrap this whole thing up and, maybe, talk to the folks at home for a minute and, give them one last taste of John Clark?
You know what? First off, Bill, just thank you. And like, to your audience, my whole thing is, and I'm serious about this. Listen, we go through a lot of stuff. Our world will make you believe that you can't handle it. It's not true. You have to shift your perspective to understand that things are gonna happen, but how you can draw sometimes learn from what's happened. Don't be the thing that has happened. The emotions, they're real. Don't Nobody's taking that away from you. But believe that, you know, if you lost somebody, for instance, or a job, whatever, believe that somewhere down the line there was something to make you a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
But you can only explore that if you give yourself the opportunity to explore it.
Perfect thought. Great, great message. I appreciate it. And to kind of maybe go back to what I usually say at the end of all my podcasts, and that is there's someone in your life that you need to reach out to and think about it for a moment. Send them a text, an email, a telephone call, carrier pigeon. I don't know. Just let them know that the world works for you because they are in it. Just if you do that like once every few days to somebody in your life and just keep reaching out and letting them know how special your life is because they are there. And if they ever need anything at all, they can call you and tell you about it. And then you can ask them whether this is something they want you to do something about or if this is something you just want to share about and be a good listener. But for God's sake, let them know that there's always another choice besides the worst one. So, with that said, John Clark, thank you again for giving us a little insight into what you're doing. You're a fantastic human being up to great things, and I really appreciate you.
Like I said, thank you for giving me an opportunity, man. Thanks for letting me come on your podcast. So I really appreciate that.
You've got it. We're doing simple questions for 100 beautiful people. And if you'd like to also be a guest on here and be interviewed and interview me at the same time, I'd love to have you. So thanks again, John. Bye-bye for now.
You've been listening to Simple Questions for 100 People, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find every episode at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.